All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our final session of the Ask the Expert panel series hosted by All for Knox. Today's panel is on recovery housing. And recovery housing plays a vital role, as we saw in our last panel, that recovery is more than just the medical or biological side of things. It is also connection. And recovery housing plays a vital role in supporting individuals as they transition from treatment into long-term recovery, giving them not just a place to live, but also a supportive environment for them to have more accountability, more community, and more stability. Today, we have a panel of local experts who will help us better understand the field of recovery housing, what to look out for when choosing a recovery home, what kind of different types of services are available here locally in the Knox County area, and other important pieces of information. So first off, we will start with an introduction of our panelists, and we'll just go ahead down the line. Bethany, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off with an introduction, and then we'll just go one by one.
So I'm Bethany, which y'all know that. I work here and do the recovery housing fund when we have funding. And then we do the house inspections, visits, pop-ups, whatever, and maintain the housing list. So that is I.
Okay, my name is Katina Woods. I work here at Metro Drug Coalition as a recovery coach and then also on New Beginnings Recovery Residence.
My name is Marlana Smartt-Byrge, operate Irongate Recovery in Knoxville, 10R Advocacy Committee co-chair.
My name is Sarah.Harris. I'm the Senior Outreach Coordinator for Oxford House in East Tennessee. Also in Oxford House, Marlana.
All right, give me just a moment. Our owl was doing something interesting. It's triggered by movement, and so I think when a car passed, it just cut over to the car. Okay.
Oh.
And then, all right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll just go through a round of questions, and then feel free to answer in whatever order you would like. There's not a particular order of individuals, but excuse me. But you are welcome to chime in whenever you would like. And we're going to pause really quickly. I might need to, just because it keeps turning.
Trying to come in here.
That will help. Okay. So first things first, and like I said, anyone feel free to chime in where you would like, and there is your microphone, by the way. So hopefully everyone is able to reach it. It shouldn't be an issue. But that being said, let's go ahead and just dive into it. What would you say is recovery housing to someone who does not know what it is?
Do I need to grab the mic?
Oh, no, it should be able to pick you up.
So recovery housing in its most basic form is housing for people that are have experienced substance use disorder, are either recovering or looking for recovery. It's typically a group of single sex, so either men or women's house. And it's bigger than like your typical household. There's more people that live there and they share that common bond of addiction.
All right, anyone else want to chime in?
I would probably explain it as safe, supportive, substance-free living environments for people who have substance use disorder, alcoholism, any kind of addiction, really. And the whole idea is that it's typically non-clinical and non-medical in nature. Usually you have a social model foundation. So to expand on that, it's just, community living peer-to-peer, not doctor, patient, not therapist, client.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, thank you. Now, the next question. Could you speak to how recovery housing fits into the broader continuum of care for substance use recovery? Oh, how does recovery housing fit into the broader continuum of care for substance use disorder?
I mean, I would just say because you're not always ready to go straight from treatment back home, like you need to adjust and that's where you learn how to be successful and how to interact with people all over again. And how to work and do all the things that people think are normal that you're not used to doing sober.
Mm,
So
Right.
without that, I feel like you're setting yourself up for failure.
mhm, mm,
Learning structure, learning how to have responsibility, just the simple things like getting up, and making the bed by a certain time. Learning that you have to work, rent comes first, you've gotta have, just learning how to budget money, so when they are able to move out on their own, have some experience doing that.
I would say from my personal experience, going in and out of the rehabs and treatment centers, anytime like I discharged after my 28-day stay, or even when I went to longer 60 or 90-day programs, anytime that I returned, back to what I considered normal life and skipped the recovery housing, I sold myself short and it ended up resulting in relapse for me. And I think it's because when we build our foundation takes a lot longer than 60 or 90 days to build it. I mean, sometimes it can take years. Just depends, it's all case by case.
mhm. Okay.
Can you read the question again?
Oh, yes. How does recovery housing fit into the continuum of care for substance use?
So the American Society of Addiction Medicine is who qualifies the criteria for the continuum of care. So you would start at detox and go to inpatient and then outpatient and then long-lasting recovery. So it falls into that gap. You need stable housing while you're participating in intensive outpatient therapy, if that's what's recommended while you're in treatment. So recovery housing is supposed to be best understood as recovery support services embedded within housing. So it's the environment is the service. And like Sarah said, you do need that long-term to stabilize. Some people are sicker than others, and all, rates of recovery are different by individual. So I would say that's where it fits in right after inpatient, and you don't have something stable to return to, especially if you have chronic homelessness, a toxic living environment that you came to. Recovery housing serves as the safe, supportive environment you need to practice transitioning to independence, ultimately so you can have lasting change.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. And I do apologize to our Zoom audience for the roller coaster that the owl just took you on. Hopefully it knows what it wants to do now and we don't have to worry about it moving forward. So given that information about the background of recovery housing and what it can provide, sometimes people have questions about what kind of different types of housing are available. They hear recovery housing and they don't know, what are the differences in tiers and services available within each one. So the next question is, what are the main differences in recovery housing services? For example, peer-led versus staff-supported, short-term versus long-term.
Okay, I'll go ahead and kick us off and speak a little bit on peer run housing. So Oxford House, it is peer run housing, and what sets it aside from any other sort of recovery housing structure is that there's no in-house staff. There's no house mom, house boss, manager, nobody that runs the house. And pretty much what it is it's the men or the women that are living in the house that participate in the running of the house. The people that live in the house hold each other accountable. And for me, that's that's what worked, because as a peer living in that house, I had the responsibility of holding my peers accountable. And I feel like that's where I started to build a little bit of integrity, because if I'm gonna hold the people around me to a standard, I better make sure that I'm reaching that standard and I'm aiming even higher. So peer run housing is, you know, I've noticed sometimes, like whether it's I'm talking to somebody that's discharging from treatment, or I'm talking with a case manager or something like that. You know, I feel like there's a lot of fear and misunderstanding. When I first heard of Oxford House, and I got to an Oxford House and they told me there was no manager, my first thought was, oh, this is one of those flop houses. I'm like, this is gonna be interesting, but after learning a little bit about their structure and how there's, you know, a democracy within the house and officer positions that are elected and everybody has a role within that house, you know, it really helped me find the long-term recovery that I have today.
Thank you. Any other responses from the rest of the panel?
I've almost thought of it, I might be wrong, but I almost thought of it like Oxford House is almost like a 3/4 house sort of. And then the sober living's more like a halfway. Is that accurate? Maybe that, you know, because there's more structure in the sober living. I mean, they still have the rules, but they just don't have, they gotta keep each other accountable. So I'd say the halfway house or sober, we're not actually halfway houses, but sober living houses. There's just more structure, more rules, more discipline is probably how I would describe it. What do you think, Marlena?
I think lots of things. Will you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so what are some of the main differences in recovery housing services, i.e. peer-led versus staff supported, or short-term versus long-term?
What's the difference in services? Is that the question, or difference between environment levels? Or is it a combo question?
It sounds like more of a combination
Because
question.
really, you're talking about two different things in your question. So when you look at levels and you look at the national standard for what levels are, you have levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you look at it through the lens of medical, you're looking at type P, type M, type C, type S. And those are all different things that provide different kinds of services. So what Sarah was talking about would be your level 1, your type P, peer-to-peer, but Oxford has its own model and its own charter. Oxford stands alone with that, and they don't interfere with other types of housing. And they've been around over 100 years. So they have that pretty much cemented in. Then you have other types of housing in recovery housing. You have level 2s and 3s, which is what you have in Tennessee. Tennessee doesn't have any level 4 clinical social model foundation housing. Because in the state of Tennessee, if you have clinical services in the environment, you have to be licensed by the department. So, and technically here we have licensed alcohol and drug halfway houses. So what people call halfway houses are technically licensed facilities here in the state of Tennessee. So sometimes that language gets confused. It is halfway in the sense that you're halfway there. But when you say halfway house, you're talking about a licensed facility. When you're talking about sober living or you're talking about recovery housing, you are talking about an environment that typically doesn't have clinical services unless you're level 4, which again is not in the state of Tennessee, or you have level 3, which is your employed staff, your CPRSs, your employed recovery coaches, things like that. And then you have level 2, which is predominantly what Tennessee has, your regular recovery housing with like a monitoring leader. That's what type M stands for, monitoring. You'll have some kind of director or program coordinator. that oversees, that runs point for outside agencies. And then you'll have live-in peer alumni staff. People that have lived there for a long time, that have completed, that still live there, that serve as peer leadership in the house. So, and the services range. So for example, Irongate's a level 2 type M environment. So the services that we provide are regular drug screening to help with accountability. Referrals to outside agencies if someone needs clinical or medical services. Having community partnerships with organizations like the Metro Drug Coalition. Having relationships with other homes beyond level 2, but also like Oxford, so you can do referrals when someone needs to transfer. Having a good relationship with your judicial partners in your courts. All of these things are important, and of course your treatment in your emergency rooms. So having a whole arsenal of organizations that you can refer to when your participant or your resident needs assistance, those are the kind of services that are provided beyond the safe, supportive, substance-free environment. You know, so I guess it was a loaded question, Sharina.
I'm very sorry for throwing you that. Thank you for your answer, though.
That was a great answer,
Good,
Beth.
yeah.
So in thinking about the different options that exist in any given area, other questions that people have shared in the past and with our recovery housing partners is simply, you know, if I'm looking for myself or if I'm looking for a loved one, how am I supposed to know which one best fits my needs? So given that, what are some tips or strategies that you all could offer so that people can more readily understand which kind of house or how to find the house that does best suit them?
So, okay, and I'm always gonna be a woman that just speaks from my experience. For me, like, the answer was trial and error. Obviously, like, if you have a caseworker, you have a discharge planner, you have somebody that's gonna help you guide you on that path. Definitely follow their advice. If they're saying, hey, you have a history of relapse and this, you know, this peer run housing thing doesn't seem to be working out for you, we think maybe leveling up to a level 2 type of house might be a solution where you can find a little bit more stability before you're ready to move on to that peer run structure. I think that's great, working with discharge planners and I'm sorry, care coordinators and things like that. But for me, it was, I mean, I tried whatever was available. And it wasn't easy. It was a long path. It took me about 10 years of trial and error to finally figure out what it was that was gonna work for me. And I feel like no matter what a therapist, a counselor, a discharge planner would have told me at that point in time when I'm, you know, fresh out of rehab looking to transition, I only hear so much. The disease is definitely still in control at that point. And honestly, I just had to try everything to understand it. That's just the type of learner that I am. So it's a difficult path. It's hard to navigate. And there's never just one clear-cut answer.
Yeah, and I feel like it's gonna be different for everybody. Like her house might be horrible for me, but it's changed her life, you know? And that's gonna be for any situation. You can pick out issues at any house, anywhere. But I think it's more if you are ready, then you're gonna work on yourself and your program in your house, and it might not work, and you might need to change houses, you know? But each house has their own thing going, and they're all very individual. But not everything, it's very individualized.
Did you say the family, if the family was calling for a person? I would say, write down a list of questions. One of those questions are if they are 10R certified, or at least they're working on it. Find out how many rooms are in a bedroom. Find out, how big the house is, if there's just what they have going on there, because there is some houses that you may get to, and I mean, they may be infested with bed bugs, they may have 10 people to a room, they may be sleeping on mattresses in the floor. I mean, they're just not all up to standard. So find out how long the program is, considering whatever it is they need. If I was a family member, I would probably call and make sure they have some sort of GPS on their location, so they're kind of keeping an eye on them and keeping them accountable. Find out what their rules are. Find out, if they're a smoker, if they allow smoking, if they allow them to have their mental health meds. Just a lot of different questions like that. Just have a list of questions and then call each sober living house and see which one would fit them the best.
All right, wonderful, thank you.
I'll add to, I'll echo what Katina said. One of the first questions would be, what kind of designations do you have? Are you 10R certified? Are you TDOC approved? Are you affiliated with the Metro Drug Coalition? So these things. And then obviously the guidelines and the culture of the house, I would ask about that. And another thing I would ask about is eligibility criteria. What kind of participant is accepted into this place and what makes you ineligible? I would ask about that. Medications, obviously, mental health diagnoses, are there going to be issues there? Some houses have a tighter policy on certain mental health meds that are a controlled substance. And then you have, of course, your policy on medically assisted recovery or medically assisted treatment medications. That is something that falls through the cracks a lot. And someone shows up to the house and they're on a kind of medication that goes against the policy of the house, and then a transfer has to take place. So you have that. And then one of the big things is financial transparency. So when you're on the phone trying to determine where's going to be the best fit for your loved one, one of the biggest questions you should always ask is, what are the fees? What do the fees cover? What's included? What's not included? What do I need to have when I get there? How is everything billed? How do you accept payment? What are the expectations? What happens when someone can't get a job or can't find grant funding? Get that information on the front end, financial transparency. Because I've seen a lot, houses will say, okay, this is our deposit. Well, the word deposit means you get that money back when you leave. Ask if it's a deposit or a fee. Those words mean different things. So, just questions like that. Because it creates confusion. Yeah, so that's what I would add. Everything Katina said, and then financial
Those are
policies.
huge things. The finance part, that's a big part, because a lot of times, they don't necessarily know the expectations, and they don't get a job, they're not, you can't let somebody live there for 2 months without, paying rent.
Mhm. And then you'll have the places that say, oh, this is the fee. And then when someone new gets there, that fee didn't cover anything. So you need to ask what it's applied to, things like that. Because this is a very vulnerable population, people that are just getting out of treatment, and a lot of times they get taken advantage of by houses that do not have clear financial transparency policies. So that is something to look out for.
Thank you, everyone. So the whole panel has touched on this next area of questions, which is about, are green flags essentially. What should you look for in a program that is well done? And versus what red flags should you keep an eye out for, or things that just shouldn't be provided. So we'll take it one step at a time, and I'll ask the first question, which is, and feel free to either repeat something earlier or emphasize something new. Either one is fine. But what should a recovery house provide, and how should it look when it's done safely?
So I think, I mean, it's still a loaded question, because there's a lot there that I think they should provide, so I'll let these talk. But to me, the first thing I'm looking for is safety. Is it safe? Are they safe there? Does it feel like home? Does this feel like they're back in jail? Or are they gonna be able to be proud of what's going on here, you know? Yeah, I'll say that. Go ahead.
I think, you know, there needs to be structure, but not someone that is just constantly just.
Covering.
Yeah, hovering them. I mean, they have to follow rules, but, you know, just not someone that's controlling or that has let it go to their head, you know, just kind of someone that's just structured, keeping people accountable, I think is definitely something. And safety, absolutely, for sure, safety. Absolutely on safety.
Well, what does safety mean? That means something different to everyone.
It does, yeah, it does.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, fire safety, pest control contract, certificate of insurance. All these things contribute to a safe home. Another thing is trained staff. So even if you have volunteer peer staff that aren't paid and don't receive a W-2 at the end of the year, there still needs to be continuing education to prevent the things that Katina was just talking about. You know, the hovering, what she's talking about is like a custodial environment. You don't want them to go there and feel like they just got out of jail. And part of that has to do with how the staff is trained. And all of it trickles down from the leadership of the house. And that's the truth. And that's something, you know, I don't want to talk about that a lot, but whoever owns the house and the top leadership of the house, that attitude trickles down into the staff, which trickles down into the participants and goes back out to the community. That should be looked at. That's the culture of the house, all of those things, you know? Yeah, certificate of insurance. Do they have, you know, fire extinguishers, you know, like these normal things that we think of.
And a lot of times, 10R and MDC will look for those things. So if you're asking that question, it's gonna result.
That's the best way to determine what constitutes a safe house. What are the green flags for housing? They're certified, they're affiliated, and they're approved across national, state, and local organizations. If they don't have that, or a combination of some of that, there's a reason for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
It's good stuff. It's tough to follow up. But when I think of green flags, I think the first thing that comes to mind is like reputation. What do other community partners say about this? What, Google it, you know, simply getting on Google sometimes, it's crazy how you can get on Google today, punch in some keywords, and it'll pop up with a Facebook thread from 3 years ago, you know, like, I think that reputation speaks volumes, and if we're looking for like a starting point with like green flags and everything and what to look for in recovery housing, I definitely think like doing your own independent research, even calling, you know, give them a call if you're not ready to commit to the housing, or if you are calling for a family or friend, give them a call. You know, get some community referrals, people that have been there or have people that have been associated with that place, and just do your due diligence and kind of try and find those green flags.
All right,
How
thank
do they
you.
make you feel when you're on the phone with them?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a huge first impression.
How do they make you feel when you're on the phone?
Or
with them?
when you get there, before
Yes.
you lay your head on the pillow,
Mm.
before you go to bed.
Yeah.
How do you feel? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
And that's,
do you wanna live here?
yeah, that's
Do
something
you
that,
wanna live here? Yeah.
talking about like the training of staff or even like peer staff, volunteers within the house, you know, that's something that I feel like gets talked about often, like if you're the contact and you're picking up the phone, for somebody that's looking for a home, like you need to be welcoming. You don't wanna get on the phone and act rushed, like we're dealing with people's lives and with their welfare and everything, and getting on the phone and rushing through it, acting like you're too busy, call back later, you know, that can drive somebody right back into the grips of addiction.
Mm. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for all the information. So this might be a can of worms.
This would be so much fun.
Are we talking about red flags?
I love
now?
Yes, the next question is, and you had mentioned, several of you had already mentioned some red flags, like number of beds, do they even have a fire extinguisher? Do you feel like you're in a safe place, you know, that sort of thing, but are there any other red flags that you wanted to point out? So that people can keep that in their back pocket to decide whether or not this option that they're looking at is a good option for them.
I think, drug and alcohol use in the house, being permitted, I think that's, I swear, you don't hear about these things, so there's, you know, and I'll go ahead and I'll speak from experience again, you know, and this is back, you know, years ago, and this was in a different state, it wasn't here in Tennessee, but, you know, I've been to places before where you get there and the place has a reputation of letting you stay if you're failing drug tests and getting high. Like, what is that gonna do for your recovery? It's not, like, there's other motives there. It's the money that's become the motive over the people's recovery within the house. Other red flags, I mean, violence. I think violence within the house being tolerated. Yeah, it's just, I think that the attitudes of the people within the house, whether it's, you know, the leadership of the house, whether that's a volunteer house president, a house manager, or something like that, I think passive aggressive attitudes, I've been through some things, but I've not been through some things. Here, how about this? I'm gonna table my speech and just this is good stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna pass it along.
But that's still, I mean, that is a thing.
I mean, it
here,
is.
Still,
Yeah.
maybe not in these houses, obviously.
Yes, no. not here.
But that is very much a thing still.
Yeah.
People
We've heard that.
are very focused on anybody can go open a halfway house. That's the problem right now, okay? So they don't, not all houses care that you don't have to be sober as long as you're paying that
Yes.
rent.
Yeah.
That's very much a thing. That's not okay.
Missing the point. Like, that's not why we're here.
It's not sober living.
Yeah.
So that's a very real thing. And do they have actual policies? Do they have, you know, how do they handle that? How long, if you have a house manager, how much clean time do they have? That makes all the difference in the world.
Or the homeowner, I'm doing.
Right, there's that. I mean, there's so much.
How long have they been in business? You know, or did they just pop that house up yesterday or they've been in business a few years? Yeah, make sure they've got a written drug screen policy, written rules, things like that.
Or drug screens,
That's red
period.
flags, not red flags. Yeah.
Thank you. It's validating.
And just taking a quick break, Katina, could you move your water bottle closer between you and Bethany? It's blocking everything.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
perfect, thank you, no worries, no worries. All right, thank you, everyone, sorry if that revisited some poor experiences for some of us. In kind of transitioning over to a more like logistical aspect of the recovery housing exploration process. What resources are available to help people find legitimate, high-quality recovery housing options? Since it seems like you could just Google it and then you get 2,000 different options.
I would say utilizing the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services website. There's a lot of really good information on there. It seems like there's, you know, directions, links that you can click, get to the 10R.
All the certification.
Yeah, I mean,
references.
just everything that's legit, it seems like is on there. I'm sure there's some other legit ones that haven't made it on there yet, but if you're looking for legitimacy, I think that's a good place to start.
Mhm. So what Sarah's talking about is the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services has a recovery housing dedicated page on their website, and that page has lists of different recovery houses that receive grant funding from the department. So that's a pretty good indicator that there is some validity to that organization if they receive department funding. That's one thing. They also have a list of all the certification organizations. So you have everything from Joint Commission and CARF to Oxford and 10R. So these are the different organizations that certify or accredit different kinds of environments. That'll be changing though, January 1st, some of those things because the law is changing. Let's not get into that part right now. So we'll go down a big rabbit hole there. Yeah, but like that, you can go to Oxford's website and look at all their houses across the entire country. If you want to do that, if you need a level 1, a peer-to-peer environment like that, if you need something a little more robust in your structure, then you can look at the Tennessee Alliance for Recovery Residences website. They have a directory statewide. You have the Tennessee Department of Corrections. If you're a reentry justice involved person, 9 times out of 10, you have to live in TDOC approved housing. That's not all levels of probation, but a lot of levels of supervision will require that. So you can go to their website and look at that.
I think when you do that, they've shut down TDOC right now, or not TDOC right now.
So they've shut down the, so you can't get a new house on that list right now, but the
The
list
information is still
valid.
there. Yeah, the Tennessee Department of Corrections is still working. What's happening right now is they paused adding any new housing providers to their housing provider list across the state of Tennessee. They're revisiting some of their guidelines to be a part of that approval process. That's what they're doing. But you can still access the website and look at, you know, which houses are approved. And then the Metro Drug Coalition has a list. All for Knox has a list. All for Knox has a recovery housing directory for Knox County in the city of Knoxville. So if you see time and time again, all these places that you're looking and you see the same providers, that's a pretty good indicator. And then you go to Google and read their reviews. And, you know, and you'll always have those people that get on Google and leave you a bad review. You know, because they were upset they got released or whatever, that happens.
It's not their fault.
It wasn't their fault,
It's not
right?
their fault.
Yeah, but if the majority of them are positive, that's a pretty clear indicator that that you're looking at somewhere that's gonna be safe and supportive to go live.
All right, great. So to quickly sum up, there is a list on the Tennessee Department of Mental Health Services Administration. No, wait.
Tennessee
Substance Abuse
Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse
Abuse
Services.
Services, thank you. As well as Tennessee Department of Correction, allforknox.org, and then MDC, is it metrodrug.org? So all of these websites, they do have resources that people can access for free at any time to look at different options in the area or across the state. So thank you everyone for that. At this time, we're going to transition into kind of the open question segment of today's panel, where we do have some questions that have been collected beforehand that you can now answer, some of them are direct to specific people, but then others the whole panel can answer. And I'll go ahead and pause here and say, for those of you who are joining us online, you're welcome to go ahead and put your question in the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen. Or if that's too frustrating to deal with, you're welcome to throw it in the chat as well. Either one is fine. Nobody's perfect. All is okay. So with our first question, it's actually directed to you, Sarah. There are a ton of Oxford houses in Knoxville alone. I'm not sure which one I can benefit from most. How do I figure that out? If there are so many options, am I supposed to be interviewed, or do I call, or something else?
Okay, so how to narrow down which Oxford house in Knoxville? I would say that first I would look at the location. And we have houses that are right in front of a bus stop. We have houses that are a 2-mile drive from a bus stop. And we have houses we have houses in every neighborhood in Knoxville. So if you have a job already and you want to be close to that job, looking at location, I think would narrow your list down, the quickest. And then after that, I would highly suggest calling each house, setting up the interviews, and keep in mind that as the houses are interviewing you, you should be interviewing the houses. Is this somewhere that you want to live? And you can learn a lot about the culture and the dynamic of that individual house during that house interview. We also see slight variations in the house rules from house to house. So I'll use the example of, we might have a house where 7 out of the 8 people living there work a 3rd shift overnight job. They're not gonna have the same curfew rules as another house. If you're somebody that you've got, let's say you're gonna live in a women and child's house, and you've got your child with you, your child goes to school, and you've got 3rd shift workers in the house. I've seen it get to the point where if the kid's being loud during the daytime, which is their nighttime, that dynamic itself can become, it can become pretty tricky. So, I suggest narrow down the location, call the houses, set up the interviews, and you ask the questions that are important to you.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next question is a bit of a long one. My current roommates are cool. We've never had any issues or anything in the past. Until recently, I told them I wanted to move out into a recovery house. I don't want to put them in a bind with rent, but I want to live in a place where I know no one's bringing in alcohol and they don't really want to do that for me. How do I move out for me while not burning bridges?
Is this like a normal roommate situation, like just living in the real world?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't know if there's a lease or anything. I'm gonna pass this one on over here.
Are you in recovery yourself?
It sounds like the person is starting their recovery journey and they're wanting to move out into a house, like a recovery house.
I mean, I feel like as long as if your name is not on the lease, I mean, I don't know, if you're just trying to not burn bridges, but
It's tough, I mean,
call us.
so to get into recovery, I've had to burn a lot of bridges to get here. There's a lot of people who I valued, back in the day that I had to cut out of my life in order for me to make positive changes and grow. So I would say that can't take priority. Once again, the whole lease thing is, I don't wanna be like, just leave, and you're on a lease, and then, I don't know, would that be viable?
Can you read the question again?
Yes. My current roommates are cool and we've never had issues in the past. Until recently, I told them I wanted to move out into a recovery house. I don't want to put them in a bind with rent, but I want to live in a place where I know no one's bringing in alcohol and they don't necessarily want to stop doing that for me. How do I move out for me while not burning bridges? So I think it's more like and then you were touching on this subject, Sarah, is it essentially possible to move out and not burn these bridges if they're already not willing to accommodate requests, like don't drink around me?
Well, that just depends on the boundaries that you set. So if you tell your roommates, I don't want to drink anymore, and they continue to drink, I mean, that's their own decision. I mean, if I expected everyone around me to not drink because I don't want to, I'd be severely disappointed and let down. So if it was me, I would just give notice,
Yeah.
pay up my last little bit.
Mm.
In that meantime, I would schedule a bed somewhere and go in and then just move on.
Mm.
Not expect my roommates to get on board with the choices I'm making for myself. They may not do that. You know,
Mhm.
and then just, you know, burn the bridge and
Burn
move
it.
on.
Yeah,
Sometimes those bridges need burn,
yes.
so.
And really, sometimes it'll be fine. I mean, you give notice, you pay your part and you move on and life goes on for everyone,
Mhm.
you know?
And they didn't share anything about like lease information, so we'll just assume that's not part of the question.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, go find a new roomie.
Mm. All right, and then just checking, so the last question that we do have is, I think, another very specific one. I'm helping my son find a place to live while he's in recovery, and we keep disagreeing on which place would be best for him. I want to help him be independent again, but it seems like he's settling for a program I'm not sure is his best option. How do I go about this? Do I stop helping him with his search or something else?
I would let it fall on his face.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sounds terrible. But we always want what's best for our kids and sometimes they make really horrible decisions. And once they become an adult, here, I know for me, I have almost 10 years clean. And if my parents would have assisted me in that transition and continued to do that, it wouldn't have been as effective. It was effective because I made the decisions myself.
Mm.
And that's really difficult to talk to a loved one about sometimes, you know. A lot of times they feel at fault for the way their child has turned out. And they want to continue trying to fix it. So in those scenarios, this just happened to me this week. I was talking to a parent and what I suggested to her was that if she was aware that she had an enabling problem.
Mm.
So what I suggested to her was to limit her support of her son in doses. Like if you go hard at 100%, reduce it by 50. Practice that and then reduce that again. You know, set a boundary for yourself. I'm only going to help this much and then quit, you know. Or you can just cut the cord and let them fall on their face because that's how I learned. You know, I know that's really difficult.
Mm.
How many times do you have to talk to people and offer those same kind of suggestions?
Like all the time.
All the time.
And
Mm.
I would agree with that. You know, it sounds cold, like let him fall on his face, but like we can't control where that person's gonna go, what they're gonna do. You definitely don't want them in early recovery to start resenting you for making the decisions for them, because that can be even more toxic to that relationship that you're trying to work on. My parents enabled me for a very long time. You know, they were they coordinated where I would go to treatment. They coordinated what my aftercare would look like. Would choose the most reputable places that they thought, and they sent me to South Florida, back in the midst of all of it, because they had yoga on the beach. So I think as parents, we have the best intentions, and addiction in general is such a beast that even with the greatest ideas, like you can't really combat that thing. It's a lot of trial and error. And like, I'll go back to saying that again, like I had to try everything to understand what worked best. I don't even remember what the question was. Did I do it?
You did, yeah. Yeah, so
Okay.
it was a mom asking,
okay.
yeah, on behalf of her son.
It's
And
hard. You can sit there and try and control it, but I think you're going to feel more defeated by doing that. I would let him make his decisions, and if it turns out to be the wrong decision for him, time will tell.
Hmm. Thank you. Katina, Bethany, anything to add?
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My cord was cut a long time ago,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, and that's when you figure it out.
That's
He'll
exactly-
either make it or he won't, you
Hit
know?
rock, hit rock bottom.
So, mama's gotta let the bird fly.
Mhm.
Moms
And-
hate that answer though.
Yeah.
They
do. I would also, another way to think about it is just be the net. Not the decider of
Mm.
what's happening, but the net underneath it. Make your decisions. If those fail, you can fall back on the net. And then we'll do it again. And you're gonna make another decision and then you fall back on the net. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Just be like under here, just like waiting.
Mhm.
I don't mean like cut the cord and never speak to your kid again. That's not, you know?
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's really hard when I talk to parents all the time a lot, especially if I'm getting a younger person, a person in the 18 to 24 demographic. Yeah, a lot of parents,
Mm.
you know, and, I mean, you spend a lot of time on the phone trying to even help them let go, you know? A lot of time, that's what Nar and Al-Anon are for.
Mhm. And I appreciate you mentioning that too.
Sure.
Not that the question also asked about resources, but in taking the opportunity to do so, I think we would all want to highlight and explain to parents, you know, they are not the only resource that they're really that anyone has. We have our certified peer recovery specialists, we have recovery coaches, we have groups, we have other ways to create structure and support. But just to add a little note there so that any potentially panicking parent listening to this doesn't have to panic as much.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's good. I feel like that was really good. So like you can get somebody else to do this stuff, like get you a recovery navigator to sit down with your kid and go over some statistics, some facts, some options and lay it all out. And that way you as the mama don't have to, but if you put them in touch with a recovery navigator, you know the job's gonna get done and it's gonna get done well.
Mhm.
And while that appointment is happening, go to an Al-Anon meeting.
Yes.
Mhm. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. If all of you who are here in person would join me in giving a round of applause and thanks to our panel. All right, so thank you everyone for joining us as we talk about what recovery housing is. And let me take folks on another little roller coaster. I had to switch the owl to manual because it kept wanting to highlight your very nice window here. But as we have finished walking through our series, we closed with talking about recovery housing, the services available, how to navigate even some of the trickier situations of how do I support my loved one, how do I help them search, and other factors like that. And we know that the navigation of this process can be overwhelming. We know that it can take time, and our community is very fortunate to have so many knowledgeable people, such as each one of our panelists, available to help guide individuals and families towards those safer, more appropriate recovery housing options. So thank you again, panelists, for sharing your insights today. If anyone watching, since we're going to record or we are recording, we're going to upload the recording of today's session to the All for Knox website. If anyone watching has questions, would you be comfortable with me listing your emails in the description?
Yeah, that would be great.
Perfect, thank you. So if anyone watching this after the fact has questions, we'll have the panelists' information there so that you can ask whatever thoughts you may have or get some more information on your specific situation. But that being said, thank you again to our audience for being here, and thank you again, each one of you. We will go ahead and close the session. Have a wonderful rest of your day.